All right, welcome to Hoops Tonight here at The Volume. Happy Thursday, everybody. Hope all of you guys are having a great week. Just a really quick show here this morning. We're going to hit two games, instant reaction style from last night. The Los Angeles Lakers getting a win against the Miami Heat to snap a three-game losing streak. Impressive second half. LeBron James doing a nice job picking apart that Miami Heat zone. We're going to break that game down. Then in the second half of the show, the Golden State Warriors get a huge, important win for them on the road in Minnesota. Steph Curry's fantastic, interesting couple of sequences at the tail end of the game that we're going to get into. We'll break that game down from the perspective of both teams. You guys know the drill. Before we get started, subscribe to the Hoops Tonight YouTube channel so you don't miss any more of our videos. Follow me on Twitter at @JasonLT so you guys don't miss show announcements. Don't forget about our podcast feed, wherever you get your podcasts under Hoops Tonight. It's also super helpful if you leave a rating and a review on that front. We also have brand new social media feeds on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook where we're releasing content throughout the year. Make sure you guys follow us there. And then last but not least, keep dropping mailbag questions in the YouTube comments. We're having another mailbag just like we do every week coming out tomorrow on Friday. All right, let's talk some basketball. So this Lakers-Heat game was an interesting game. The Heat really controlled the first half. The Heat guards, Terry Rozier and Tyler Herro, were really picking apart Max Christie. Like early, and Max Christie, I've been talking about this with the Lakers. Like I am a huge believer in him being like kind of a rock solid NBA role player for a long time. I think he's got enough off the dribble and shooting polish that he's going to be a pretty decent offensive player in a few years too. And he's just got good physical tools, good quickness, commitment to the defensive end. So I'm a believer in Max, but as I keep saying, he's just a young player, makes a lot of mistakes, and there's an inconsistency with him, which is super normal for young basketball players. And he was kind of the culprit of a lot of the Laker defensive breakdowns in the first quarter. Like Bam Adebayo's posting up AD. You like that matchup. He doesn't need help down there. He's just fine. You're guarding Tyler Herro, the guy who's been one of the most lights out shooters in the league this year. Instead of just kind of staying home, he ends up kind of lingering down in the paint, leaves Tyler Herro wide open. Bam just throws a simple kick out pass. Tyler Herro knocks down the three. A couple possessions later, him and Austin, remember Austin's guarding Terry, he's guarding Tyler. There's a simple interchange between the two. That just needs to be a switch. It's easy basketball, right? Austin thinks it's a switch, so he stops chasing Terry Rozier. Max is not paying attention, and Terry Rozier just drives right by Max, gets into the basket, and makes a layup. You get switched on Terry Rozier a couple possessions later. They run a ball screen on the left side of the floor. He goes under the ball screen. And when you go under the ball screen, the whole point of going under is to contain the ball. If you go over, you're taking away the pull-up jump shot. If you go under, you're containing the drive, right? That's what drop coverage is. If you go over the top, you have your big there to help you on the drive. If you go under, you can actually cut off the drive yourself and you don't require any help. But he goes under and he takes a really bad angle, doesn't actually cut Terry Rozier off. He just goes right around him. Drives right in. LeBron has to hard help. Easy kick out to Haywood Highsmith in the right corner. He knocks it out. Knocks it down. He had a bad closeout against Tyler Herro right on the right wing where Tyler just went right around him and got a driving layup. He just wasn't, it was a lot of like hectic movement without a lot of like really baseline understanding of fundamental defense. And it caused some issues for the Laker defense in the first half. Miami also shot the ball extremely well. They took 22 jump shots in the first half. And got 1.68 points per attempt. That's like crazy. Tyler Herro just continues all year to hit shots. And like, I'm going to say the same thing about Tyler Herro that I've said about the Cleveland Cavaliers and a lot of these other teams around the league. Like, when you see a guy who's shooting really, really well, when historically he shoots at a lesser level, if you see a team that's shooting really well, when some of their guys historically don't shoot as well, yeah, we can sit here and talk about like, oh, well, they won't make shots when it matters. But yeah, they also might. So, like, my thing with that, when it comes to, like, if a guy's shooting super well or not, it's not really worth getting into. We'll find out. We'll find out if this is the new Tyler Herro. And if this is the new Tyler Herro, then he's a star in this league. And if it's just a one-year hot shooting streak, then obviously it's a different conversation that Miami needs to have. But whatever it is, this year, Tyler Herro is just shooting the damn laces off the basketball to his credit. But the game was actually pretty close in the first quarter, but in the second quarter, Spoelstra just went all in on zone defense, and the Heat built their first margin of the game during that span. Remember, Miami's zone defense is so much better than everyone else in the leagues. They invest so much more time in practicing it. It's a very different type of zone than other zones around the league because it's very active. It's very like guys are pressuring the ball, jumping, passing lanes. A lot of times zone defenses breed passivity in people because you're only responsible for this area. So you think about like, oh, this guy cut out of my area or the ball's over there. There's nothing I need to be doing. Eric Spoelstra has built a very active zone with the Miami Heat, and that causes a lot more disruption and issue for opposing offenses. And the Lakers weren't getting terrible looks in the first half, but they weren't getting great looks either. It was a lot of, they were basically just screening the top man every single time. So like, if you imagine a 2-3 zone, there's 2 guys at the top, there's 3 guys on the baseline. You have your 2 ball handlers up top. But if you bring Jackson Hayes up to screen the top man, and let's say it's LeBron on the left side and Austin's on the right side, if you screen the top man, LeBron can get into the lane, and now it's basically a 2-on-1 with him and Austin. And if that guy steps over to stop the drive, he can pitch it out to Austin. And if he doesn't step over to stop the drive, LeBron can just keep going into the lane and either make a kick out or make something at the rim. And it wasn't like, again, they weren't getting terrible looks, but they weren't getting great looks either. Some contested stuff in the paint, and they were missing some of their kick out threes in that situation. But the main thing that stood out to me is not much in the way of variety. They were basically just spamming that high screen the top man instead of using more ball and player movement to beat the zone. They ran 20 possessions of zone in the first half, Miami did, and the Lakers only got 0.85 points per possession. And so the Heat end up going into the locker room up by 12. They were the better shot makers in the first half. They played better defense in the first half. They get a margin as a result. But in the second half, LeBron just completely dominated that game and just eviscerated Miami's zone. There's several things you have to do to beat a zone, right? And we talked about it earlier, like you can do things like screen the top man, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but there's got to be variety. There's got to be ball and player movement. There's several different things you got to get into. One, you need to get the ball into the middle of the floor, like around the foul line. Why? It draws the attention of all 5 guys, and that's what opens up the opportunities for guys to get open around that, cutting along the baseline, relocating around the above the break line. You got to get the ball into the middle of the floor. The next thing is off-ball movement. You have to have guys that capitalize on the attention that is drawn when the ball gets to the middle of the floor. Everyone turns their eyes towards the middle. You've got to be relocating to find openings. You got to be cutting along the baseline. Rui was great at this all night, just cutting out of the slot, like on the wing towards the rim when the ball would get into the middle of the floor. Got to get the ball in the middle of the floor. Got to have guys moving around. You got to hit some catch and shoot threes. Like you have to knock down the threes over the top of the defense that zone is designed to give up, right? And then lastly, you need to be able to score in the middle of the floor. Meaning, if you do get the ball to the middle of the floor and the other 5 members of the zone kind of stay home, meaning the center just says, I'm going to take away the rim and force you to make some sort of shot in the middle of the floor. The 2 wings in the corner kind of stay home, and the 2 guys on the top are just tracking shooters. There's space there in the middle of the floor. And basically what Miami's saying in that situation is score. Go score there. And you need to have guys who are willing to score there. Every single player on the Lakers in different ways stepped into those 4 roles. Like the getting the ball into the middle of the floor, LeBron and Austin just making sure that the feeds were there, whether it was to Anthony Davis or it was to Gabe Vincent or it was to Austin and LeBron from each other. They got the ball into the middle of the floor. The off-ball movement, it was really everybody. Everybody was doing a good job. More dog hair. This is my life. Oh my God. Drives me crazy. Okay. So the off-ball movement we talked about earlier, Rui's cutting. Guys are cutting along the baseline. Shooters are relocating. Gabe and Austin, everyone's doing their job in that regard. Hitting the catch and shoot threes. LeBron hits a couple big ones, right? On the left wing or on the left corner and then in the right corner. Those were the first 2 shots that kind of shrunk the deficit down to, I think it was like 73-70 at that point. And Miami ended up building it back up when LeBron was on the bench in the middle of the third quarter. But LeBron hit a couple big catch and shoot threes. Gabe Vincent hit some threes. Like Max Christie started hitting threes. Rui Hachimura. Like everyone just starts hitting shots, which ended up loosening up the zone a little bit that way. And then the scoring in the middle of the floor is mostly Anthony Davis and Gabe Vincent. Like AD just hitting quick post moves against Bam, like a little left shoulder hook, or against Kel Ware. And then Gabe Vincent, again, like he was doing it with those little short range fadeaways. Again, like the zone is kind of designed to concede a kind of tough contested shot there in the middle of the floor. And Gabe was just hitting them. Gabe was turning over his right shoulder and is just shooting a nice shot, a soft shot that would roll in on the rim or swish through. And those were just, again, in all of those specific areas, guys were making plays. But the one guy that I wanted to really emphasize here was LeBron in his passing. like, again, these openings that are in the zone, they're brief, right? Like, one of the things that happens in a zone, like we talked about earlier, you're only responsible for your area. And so as a guy cuts away from you, you kind of are passing them off. And so there are these like little transitions where, you're a guy is out of the zone of the area of one man in the zone, but he's entering into the area of another man in the zone, but he might be tracking a different player at that point in time. And so there are these like little temporary openings where a guy can kind of like slip into a gap between two zone defenders while one of them is distracted or something along those lines. And they're usually tight windows, and they're usually tough passes, like the skip passes you have to hit. Like, you got to put a certain amount of touch on them to get it over the top of all the arms, but you also have to get it to get there quick enough to where the defense can't rotate, or the ball that can land into the shooting pocket so the guy can make a quick decision. These tight space, like there was a pass that LeBron hit to Rui cutting out of the right wing towards the basket, and it was like a bounce pass that was literally just threaded into that tiny gap between the center and the guy that was guarding Rui up at the top of the key. It's just a lot of like tight space passing. And LeBron especially, but Austin as well. Austin had a great passing game. He had 14 assists in this game, but those two guys just did a great job making the connective passes to put together the player movement that was generating openings against the zone. In the second half, Miami ran 29 possessions of zone, and the Lakers got 1.21 points per possession. Again, everyone contributed. Austin with his passing, LeBron with his passing and his shooting, Gabe with his mid-range shot making, Rui with his cutting. Rui had 23 points in this game. Anthony Davis hit a couple of big shots over the top. Just everybody made big plays. And at the tail end of the game, LeBron's shot making really brought it home. That three that he hit at the top of the key, little pull-up jump shot and pick and roll with Anthony Davis around the left elbow, a turnaround right shoulder fadeaway. Like, LeBron's shot making is going to be key to this team accomplishing anything this year, because again, they're going to probably make a trade here in the next month that is centered around more of like a defensive two-way guard to anchor this team, or a backup center or something like that. I don't think the Lakers are going to make an ultra aggressive move for a star. We'll see. We'll see what happens, but and I'm going to talk about that with Jovan when we finish up here today. But like, there's no doubt that like that they're not going to get there. It's more likely than not that they're not going to get more offensive firepower at the deadline, which is going to put a certain amount of responsibility on LeBron for that to make those types of shots, right? And for Austin to make those types of shots, and for Anthony Davis to make those types of shots. From the football playoffs to college and pro basketball to the rush of hockey, what a time to be a sports fan. It's all happening, and you can get in on all the action of all the sports you love at DraftKings Sportsbook. With so many sports, every day is game day at DraftKings. That means unlimited opportunities to place your first bet, and DraftKings makes it easy. How easy? Try betting on something simple like picking a team to win. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and pick your team and place your bet. One of my favorite bets to look at right now is the NBA championship picture. I have 3 teams in the same tier. I have Boston, Oklahoma City, and Cleveland all in the same tier. But Boston's at plus 250, the Thunder at plus 265, the Cavs are at plus 1100. So some nice value there. And to help get you started, here's something special for all new customers. Bet $5 to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code HOOPS. That's code HOOPS, that's HOOPS, for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5. DraftKings, the crown is yours. The last thing I wanted to hit on the Lakers front was the defensive improvement. So I talked a lot about the 1-5 switching in the last video, right? And again, the Lakers switched 1 through 5 a lot to start the year. And then it looked like in the run where they kind of turned things around that they stopped and they did more selective switching and keeping Anthony Davis towards the rim more in drop coverage possessions. JJ Redick said in the pregame presser that they were going to go back to what they were using before, and that the 1 through 5 switching was matchup specific for the Spurs game. Now, what was interesting to me about that is they were doing it against Dallas as well, and I'm not really sure what the case would be for doing it against the Spurs with Victor Wembanyama versus doing it against the Mavericks with Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, guys that Anthony Davis could easily just sag off of and help in the paint. So like, again, I'm a little confused on that front, but like JJ got away from it and went back towards that more picky, more selective switching type of scheme with more high drop coverage with Anthony Davis in this particular game. But what ends up happening, and this is one of the important details that I talk about a lot on the show, like a lot of times, like I'll see people talk about like, oh, like there's this huge adjustment. This guy's guarding this guy. Or, oh, there's this huge adjustment. They did this coverage instead. And like, what's so funny to me about that is like, I don't want to pretend like that stuff doesn't matter. It does. But I feel like there's this desire to come up with a real tangible, like obvious solution that I can write down on paper. And it's like, this is why everything got better. But the truth of the matter is basketball games are a shit show. There's so many different things that go wrong in various situations. Like who you're guarding doesn't matter when 20%-ish of the possessions are transition. And in transition, there's cross matches. You're just guarding the nearest guy because in transition, it's instead of guard your man, which is the half court principle. In transition, it's stop the ball, protect the basket, spray out to shooters. So like everyone ends up in these cross matches, and now all of a sudden whatever matchup you're in doesn't matter. The scheme shifts in that sort of situation too. Like you're going to do more switching in situations like that where it's scattered. Or sometimes the big just sets a really good screen. There was a play like this in the first half. Sometimes the big just sets a really good screen, and when he does, the guard has to switch. They call it a peel-off switch. You have no choice. Like you're originally in your drop, you're chasing over the top, but you see that the ball handler has strung the big out too far. You need to now peel off, get back to the big and box him out. Or if they pitch it back, they're going to post up, right? There was a play like that. Max ended up getting switched on to Bam. And again, like this is one, it's technically a switch, right? The 5 is switching a ball screen, which is technically not the scheme. But it's an audible within the scheme. Like, oh, it's too good of a screen. I have to switch now. They immediately went to post Bam on Max. Now we're back in the same problem that we always talk about with 1 through 5 switching, which is mismatch attacking in the post, right? But what did I talk about in that video about the Lakers earlier this week? I can't even remember when we did it. In that video, if you guys remember, one of the things I talked about is like, you can't just leave guys on an island. Like, if you don't have to, in switches, just leave yourself compromised in one-on-one situations. It's a 5-man attack on defense. And like there was a early Bam post-up of Austin. LeBron double teams and forces him to give up the basketball. Max lost another play where Max lost Tyler Herro in the first half. Just one pass away, Max is not paying attention to Tyler Herro and he knocks down a 3. But if you do it right off the ball, you now have supported Austin in the mismatch. The play that I was just talking about, Max and AD switch, Bam's going to a post Max. Rui stunts in from the elbow. You can actually see Anthony Davis stunting in too, but it's stunting. What I mean by that is like you run in and kind of swipe at the ball and then get back. You're not actually double teaming. You're just trying to force the offensive player to overthink or to rush or to make a mistake. Bam ends up pump faking on the hook shot. When Rui comes in and swipes, then he has a break rhythm hook shot off of the pump fake that he misses over the top of Max. You supported Max. You didn't leave him on an island. You supported him. And this is why I keep talking about the difference between like what a scheme can do versus how well they're executed. JJ wants to switch because he has a certain view of this personnel. This group is capable of it. They're capable of switching. The problem is they just don't, they have not been committed to the work necessary for it to work. Whether they run this kind of like more selective switching scheme, which I think is better. I think you want to keep Anthony Davis at the rim as much as possible. Or if you end up full on switching, or in the situations where switches occur out of necessity, it's just about doing all the right things. It's just about like, if you swarm with stunting and helping, that allows the on-ball guy to be more aggressive. But if everyone stays home, the on-ball guy has to play a very positional style of defense where you're just forcing him to make a shot over the top, and he's probably just going to go right through you because he's bigger and stronger, or shoot right over the top because he's bigger. So again, like, it's a nice step in the right direction. That's an excellent example in that second half, or in that entire game, really, of how execution matters more than the actual scheme does, because every scheme in principle works. Certain schemes fit different personnel groups better, but every scheme in principle works. It's a nice step in the right direction, but again, with the Lakers, it's all about their day-to-day commitment, doing it night in and night out to get to where they want to go. All right, on the Warriors front. So the Warriors just completely jump the Minnesota Timberwolves out the gates. They go up by 24 points in the first quarter. The Warriors defense was excellent in that stretch. And, you know, when the Warriors defense is at their best, it's a very swarming type of attack. everybody almost looks like they're in two places at once. The ball handler always feels crowded, like he doesn't have any space to operate, but it also feels like no one catches on the perimeter clean because their closeouts are so sharp and their rotations are so sharp. So it just feels crowded with nobody open. That's when the Warriors defense is at their best. It's very swarming. One of the things they did really well in the first quarter of that game too was defending at the rim without fouling. Jumping, arms straight up, absorbing contact, forcing guys to make tough over-the-top layups. They forced a bunch of misses. Julius Randle was missing shots. Anthony Edwards was missing shots. Trayce Jackson-Davis did a bunch of damage on the offensive glass in the first half too, just beating Rudy Gobert to loose balls, beating Julius Randle to loose balls, and then Steph Curry hitting tough shots against the Wolves' drop coverage, mainly by just doing a good job of setting up guys for screens. He saw a steady diet of Anthony Edwards and Jaden McDaniels in this one. With Jaden, it's more about setting him up. With Ant just struggles tracking shooters and off-ball screens, or really in any sort of screening action. It's something that I've been pointing out here for a while. He had some really bad reps against Steph Curry in this game. But Steph is just really good at setting up his defender for screens. Again, like a screen, there's two elements to getting good contact on the screen. The screener has to get into the right position, hold his ground, be physical, set a good screen, but you also need your guard to set up the defender to run into the screen. If he doesn't do the right work before, the defender's just going to be able to run around the screen too easily. And like there's a three he hit against drop coverage on the right block. It was the deep one he hit over Gobert. He got Jaden pinned on his left side, stopped, waited for the screen, and then exploded forward to get the separation to knock down the shot. He had Ant on the left wing, same sort of thing, like a swim move where he almost like threw Ant into the screen and then ran out over the top, knocked down the three, hit a few threes in that first quarter when they jumped out to that early lead. They end up going up by 24 points. Dennis Schroeder hits a couple of threes. Buddy Hield came in, was like picking up Nickeil Alexander-Walker full court, swiped the ball away from him, hits a corner three on the other end. Guy Santos, I thought, was good again. He's just big, plays hard, can knock down an open shot, make basic driving kick reads, which is like just useful in the modern NBA when things are organized around him. And he's been playing really well as of late. The Warriors build a massive lead, and then the Wolves just kind of slowly battled back the rest of the game. And that's what you expect against a good team at home, right? They get it back to 2 in the mid-fourth quarter, but then the Warriors made just enough plays to pull it out. Trayce Jackson-Davis, when they got it down to 2, gets a tap-out rebound that leads to a Moses Moody 3. That bumps it back up to 5. Andrew Wiggins hit a big transition 3 that bumped the lead up to 6. And then Steph Curry hits 2 incredible shots to ice the game. A weak side flare off of like a dribble handoff with Kevon Looney, where Ant just wasn't paying attention. Ant relaxed, and Steph just cut off of a dribble handoff from Looney on the weak side. Wiggins was driving on the right side of the floor, and that's where Ant got distracted. But it's like, dude, you're guarding Steph Curry. You're guarding the only like guy that you cannot lose track of. And Ant just, for a split second, stopped paying attention. Steph broke free with the Looney dribble handoff in the left corner. He knocks down the 3. And then the biggest shot of the game, Naz Reid like jumps out on Steph on the left wing, and Steph rifles a bounce pass. I think it was to Gary Payton in the dunker spot on the left side of the floor. Anthony Edwards is there on the left corner area. Naz is on Steph. They both just turn their backs and stop paying attention to Steph. Steph just relocates to the left corner. Easy kick out pass. Naz Reid panic closes out when he realizes what's happening, but it's too late. Steph knocks down the 3. That should have iced the game, but we ended up needing one more big play from the Warriors for them to close this one out. In the free throw game, Gary Payton ends up missing a free throw. That makes it a 2-point game with 10 seconds left, and it's a loose ball. And Kevon Looney just bullies his way through Rudy Gobert, taps the rebound out kind of towards the corner, and then Andrew Wiggins, who was out above the break, crashed in. Ant kind of crashed in running left, and Wiggins crashed in running right, and it was just a lucky bounce. And Wiggins ran in there and got that loose ball, and that ended up saving the game. One of the last thing I want to say about the Warriors before we get out of here, one of the reasons why I'm a believer in this team investing at the deadline is their defense. Even without Draymond, this is an incredibly organized team with a good amount of foot speed that swarms and is committed. They're well coached and committed to the defensive end of the floor. I've never felt at any point this year that they like let go of the rope in a real way. There's just a very specific weakness in shot creation on this team that manifests in a way that can kind of trickle down, right? When you have poor shot creation, you can have more turnovers and missed shots. More turnovers and missed shots lead to more transition offense opportunities for the opponent. More transition offensive opportunities for the opponent means higher offensive efficiency, because as we know, every single transition possession is worth roughly 20% more than a half-court possession, right? So like they're getting extra efficiency there. That forces you to continue to attack their set defense, which is going to continue to accentuate your lack of shot creation, which is going to continue to put you in compromised positions on defense. As things get ugly, your team starts to lose belief. Then just that little extra bit of just oomph athletically can go away, and you can end up in a situation where things spiral. All of these things are intricately connected. You have a better shot creator out there on the floor with Steph. You score more frequently. You stay out of transition defense more frequently. Your team believes in what you're doing more, which brings that extra layer of intensity and verve, and it can be a snowball effect in the positive direction. This is a good defense. That's a good defense without Draymond. Draymond makes it an elite defense, right? That's a good defense that is capable of guarding, that has struggled so much with offense at times this year that things have unraveled a little bit. But bringing in a specific player into an area of need as desperate as what they have there on the offensive end of the floor can make a huge difference in kind of turning this season around for this Warriors team. Again, like this team has real strengths. I think I understand with the recent struggle that there's this emphasis on this team almost like being dead in the water. And I think this is a team with a crippling weakness. And if you address the crippling weakness, it will accentuate the strengths of the roster, which is the coaching staff, the depth of perimeter speed, the talent of Steph Curry. Those things are being ground down by this gaping hole in that secondary shot creator position that they need to address. Last thing I wanted to say, Rudy made some interesting comments after the game about rebounding and talking about like the difference between boxing out and going to get the basketball. And it's kind of an interesting concept because like in any sort of live ball rebound situation, at the big guy spot, it almost always turns into the defensive big is going to turn and box out. The offensive big is going to try like hell to get the offensive rebound, right? Like he's not boxing out, unless he has interior position, but for the most part, he's just crashing. And then there's corner crashes, right? You have the offensive players crashing out of the corners and defensive players crashing out of the corners. More often than not, it's the pursuit of the basketball that leads to rebounds. Box outs are box outs, but so many of these jumpers are coming high off of the rim towards the middle of the floor, and it actually becomes more about ball pursuit than it becomes about boxing out. When I talk about corner crashes, I actually don't think it's a great idea for the guy in the corner to turn and try to box out the guy crashing out of the corner. He's at a huge advantage. It's like open field tackling. It's an open space. He's going to hit a move and try to get around you and go get the basketball. You just need to turn and get the fucking basketball. Like that's how you rebound. From the perimeter, it's about crashing. Like it's not as much about boxing out as it is about crashing. Yeah, if you happen to go crash and the ball's high in the air and you happen to see the guy behind you, by all means, box out. But like Rudy's job is to box out. The other guy's job is to go get the basketball. Now, to one of the things that Rudy talked about was like, oh, I just need to disengage and go get the basketball. I don't disagree from time to time, but when I was watching that, I thought Rudy was missing some box outs. So like, that's where it can get a little tricky. But again, it's a team effort of rebounding, crashing from the perimeter. It's literally like, it's like that game we used to play when we were kids in elementary school where you just throw the ball up the air and everyone tries to go catch it. It's just a sheer force of will combined with athleticism, who's going to go get the basketball. All right, guys, that's all I have for today. As always, I sincerely appreciate you guys for supporting me and supporting the show. I will see you guys tomorrow for our mailbag episode.